Welcome to the March 14th, 2024 Principal Advisory Council. And we will begin turning it over to item 1 with our welcome on the agenda to our PRAC chairperson, Brian Ehrenberg. Mr. Ehrenberg?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I do know that our first piece of business here is the welcome with our interim commissioner, Robin Fields Kenny, who's actually just a little bit delayed today. So we're going to kind of pause that one and we'll come back to it when she's able to speak with us. And so it'll move us on to roll call of members. And I want to encourage our members. I know on the next slide, we've got the digital sign in. So make sure that you all have a chance to sign in on the digital attendance form. There will be a link put in the chat for that. Make sure you select today's date and provide your name. So when I call your name, please just unmute and let us know that you're here. Wayne Ackerman.
And he is actually, he gave me notice that he has transitioned to a different position. He is now serving as a superintendent, so he will no longer be joining our meetings.
Okay, thank you. Erica Bowles. Okay. Nick Brooks.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Ashley Bird. Ann Cox.
I'm here.
Thank you. Beth Davidson. Okay. Kevin Garner. Jared Hankins. Sarah Kies.
I'm here.
Thank you. Robert Lightning. Katrina McDermott. Okay. Matt Schaefer. Peggy Sinclair Morris. All right. At this time, we'll move to our agenda approval, and I'll ask that when I ask for motions and seconds, if you don't mind, please just unmute and say your name if you're going to make a motion. That way we can document that, and then you're going to voice your consensus in the chat. And so I will entertain a motion to adopt our agenda approval for today.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda. This is Ann Cox.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Sure, Nick Brooks, I'll second.
Thank you, Nick. And please just voice consensus there in the chat with a yes or a no. Okay. And then the next slide we'll go to is the approving summary of our minutes from our last meeting. There is a link to the 2023 summary. I think we're going to throw that in the chat as well, so you can take a look if you need to, but you can also click the link there. I do need a motion to accept the summary minutes.
Sarah Kaz, I approve.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have a second?
I second. This is Ann Cox.
Thank you, Ann. All right, and please consensus in the chat. And then that will take us to our Legislative and Education Professional Standards Board updates with Cassie Trueblood.
Hey, good morning. And we are in the throes of the legislative session at this point. We are currently on day 51 of the 60-day legislative session. They did amend their calendar earlier this week, so there were a few shuffling around of days, but we do still have the same adjournment time, which is going to be April 15th, which cannot get here soon enough, in my opinion. But before I get into the legislative session, I just wanted to provide you with a few updates from the Education Professional Standards Board from their December and February meetings. They did once again elect their officers in February, and Justin Mitchell has been reelected as chair of the EPSB. He is a middle school teacher out of Simpson County. And then Sarah Weedman was reelected as vice chair. She is an elementary school teacher from Jefferson County Schools. So we are very grateful to continue to have them serving on the board. Some flexibilities that continue that may be of interest to this group is last December, so December of 2022, the board originally approved the -1 SEM or standard error of measure to qualify for Praxis scores. This is just an additional flexibility, but also maintaining a standard because it is based on scientific principles around testing that do allow for a little bit of fluctuation to show true ability of a test taker. Those were piloted during the 2023 calendar year, and we received some great feedback on that and the benefits with that. So the board does plan to continue that and has extended that going forward. They are also piloting the Praxis Performance Assessment. However, the start to that was a little slow because it does require some onboarding with our ed prep institutions and some additional changes that will need to occur there. So they have also extended that pilot to see if we can get some data on that to determine if that is a feasible assessment to continue going forward. One item of note from February that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about is that we made some changes to the emergency teaching certificate regulation. Federal IDEA provisions have some specific requirements around the qualifications of special education personnel. And emergency certificates are not allowed to be issued under IDEA regulation for special education teachers. Now, there are some qualifications for alternative certifications that will meet requirements under IDEA, and our current temporary provisional certificates for those in option 6 or option 7, and then our probationary certificates. Those do meet the qualifications for alternative certifications under the IDEA, but the emergencies do not. So beginning next year, we will not be able to issue emergency certificates for special education. However, we have some guidance documents. Stacy, if you wouldn't mind to send those to the committee again. I say again, I did provide those for the TAC meeting, but these would be the first time you all are seeing those. But do just give some guidance on the available pathways for those individuals that are interested in pursuing certification for special education. This last year, we did have 290 emergency certificates, but over half of those are individuals who already hold a teaching certificate. And if the individual already holds a teaching certificate in another area, they are eligible for the probationary route. And the board also made some changes at the February meeting to the probationary certificate to allow it to be issued sooner in the process. Previously, the regulation required that the individual complete 9 hours of the coursework towards adding that certification before they could be issued the probationary certificate. But the board has removed that and has made it so that an individual who holds a teaching certificate in another area that has now been hired to serve as a special education teacher, that they can obtain a probationary certificate upon enrollment in the coursework to add that certification. Additionally, our Office of Special Education and Early Learning has provided us with some information regarding the Kentucky Traineeship Program. that offsets the cost of tuition for adding those areas of certification. For those individuals that are not currently certified, option 6 and option 7 are available pathways. We are monitoring a bill, Senate Bill 265, that has made it out of the Senate and is now with the House, assigned to House Education. So hopefully we will see that next week sometime. But it would assist with option 7 to allow that certificate to be issued sooner in the process. But I think that's a good point to transition into the current legislative session. As I said, we have about 9 legislative days left. However, that does extend all the way to April 15th because you do have the veto period in there, as well as concurrence. Some bills of note. I know with this being a 60-day session, the legislature is tasked with establishing the biennium budget. We have seen various budgets out there. The governor did release his budget in December, and then we have seen the House budget in House Bill 6, which is now passed out of the House. And earlier this week did go before the Senate committee, and there have been changes to that. Again, that is still House Bill 6, so that is the bill to look at. And I have not yet had the ability to go through the changes specifically in the Senate's version, but I will note that neither provided teacher raises. That was a point in the governor's budget, and that is not included in either of those. Now, the House budget did contain language from the General Assembly tasking local boards with utilizing the additional funds that have been provided to them to set salaries in accordance with the needs of their educators and the workforce in the area. We have also seen House Bill 2, which is moving quickly and is actually on the Senate Education Committee meeting for today. The Senate Education Committee is meeting twice today. They are meeting this morning at 11 a.m. So I'm actually running from this meeting over there to see that. But then following adjournment of the Senate, they will be meeting to discuss House Bill 2, which is regarding a potential constitutional amendment for educational funding. Again, and that is allowing funding for private schools as well. So you may have seen a lot of discussion and proposed opposition on that as well. One question that I received from the TAC committee last week was regarding a bill that would provide a one-time stipend payment. That bill is House Bill 694, and we haven't seen any movement on that yet. It is still with the committee on committees, which means it has not been assigned to a committee in the House. Following this legislative session, KDE will release guidance on all of the education bills that have made it across the finish line. There will be a lot that happens in these last 9 legislative days. Any bill that is passed as an emergency, that means that it goes into effect immediately. All other bills will go into effect 90 days after adjournment, which is early to mid-July. So again, we will have some guidance on that. I'm also going to drop 2 links into the chat for you. One is going to be just the landing page for the 2024 legislative session. And from there, you can go into all of the different headings and find any different bill that you would like to track. And then the second link is going to be to those bills that have been titled under an education heading. So that was a lot of information for you. Are there any questions? Okay, well, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Cassie. All right, now I will welcome to talk about educator well-being, Annalee Jackson.
Hi, everyone. It's really exciting to be here with you today. Give me 1 second and I will share my screen. There we go. Can everyone see it? Cool. All right. Well, first off, I wanted to start by thanking you all so much for all the work that you do for Kentucky teachers and students. I know being a principal is a huge responsibility, and also there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes. So wanted to start by saying thank you. To start us off, I have an engagement activity, and if you would put in the chat, just take a moment to share some gratitude for one person who has made a difference in your journey as an educator. And I'm sure that you could think of so many people. For me, I think about the visiting teacher who encouraged me to teach high school. I'm really, really appreciative of her. That's where I found my niche. I think about my mom. She's an art teacher, and I became a founding art teacher at one of my schools. And then I also think about my principal and the space that he was able to create, in which like I didn't have to like update him every day on what's going on in my classroom, but I knew that if something was going wrong or if I needed to talk about something, his door was open. And I didn't realize how huge that was when I had it. And so I think about that principal as well. I'm going to open up. Give us a second to share your gratitude in the chat. Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Brian. Lots of encouragement. Mentoring, awesome. Thanks, Emily. And then being challenged and pushed. Thank you, guys. All right. To start off, I want to share with y'all the Ed Week data that got me really excited and curious to further explore this topic. I want to share a resource with you all and then discuss principal well-being. So to start, just let me introduce myself a little bit further. I am the Leadership for Educational Equity Public Policy Fellow. I started in September, and I have the privilege of being here through May. I'm in the Office of Teaching and Learning in the Division of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And so I've really enjoyed getting to speak with Kentucky teachers and principals and hear about all the great work that's happening in the state. A little bit more about my educational experience. So I taught for 5 years in New Orleans, and I started off as a first grade teacher, but eventually found my way to high school, which is where I really found my niche in education. I taught college and career preparatory courses, and then founded the visual art department at my school. The Ed Week data that I wanted to share with you all today is a nationally representative poll created by Ed Week and Merrimack College. It polled 1,178 K through 12 public school teachers and was asking them directly about the district or school supports that would help them with their well-being. There was 24 answers. These are the top 6. And so I just wanted to share, when I was looking at this, the one that really stood out to me in the top 5 is more acknowledgement of good work and successes. This stood out to me because I know this is already happening so much in Kentucky schools, just from all the conversations that I've been able to have. And it's always great to amplify what's going really well, and who doesn't like to be acknowledged for their great work. And so this one is one that stood out to me as something that could really move the needle in a discussion about well-being. But I did want to acknowledge the other aspects to this list, and I think they're really multifaceted and have been a part of the conversation around educator well-being for a long time, such as pay and smaller class sizes. And I know those things are impacted by a lot of different factors. So I was really focusing in on this celebration aspect.
Annalee, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Commissioner Kenny has joined the meeting and she's a little short on time. Would it be okay if we took a pause and let her do the opening and share some words?
Yes, that sounds great.
Right,
thank you so much for allowing me to join, but I really don't want to interrupt Annalee's good presentation. So let's let Annalee, if you all don't mind, let's let Annalee go ahead and finish, and then I'll pop in immediately following her. I was a little tardy to the meeting, and I appreciate your grace in being here a little late, but I'm listening with interest to Annalee's presentation. So we'll do my update right after she concludes. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Kenny. Okay, so the next aspect of educator well-being that I focused on within the EdWeek data was what areas do educators feel that they have control and influence over? Because we know this impacts well-being. And so if you look here, blue is I agree, I have a lot of control. Red is I disagree, I don't have a lot of control. And it's really exciting to see that across the US, educators feel like they have a lot of control over most aspects of their role. The two areas where they don't feel like they have the most control is their schedule and school policies. I think it's always possible to elevate educator voice within schedules and give them more feeling of control. But I also acknowledge that there's so much that goes into scheduling and there's so many credits that students need. And so when I was thinking about what's standing out to me here, as a public policy fellow, school policies stood out. We know that educators really see policies on the ground in their classrooms, and they know what policies are going well and what policies are not going so well and maybe have really challenges to uphold. And so I like to elevate this aspect of the data because I think through elevating educator voice and collaboration within school policies and collaborative problem solving, you can really increase the amount of control that educators feel. And this is something that I've heard from schools that in Kentucky they're already doing and doing a great job of including educator voice. In that conversation they did elevate. It would be great to continually have that conversation because we know so much changes within day to day, week to week within our schools. So with that, so looking at that data, doing some research and talking with different educators, created this resource, Educator Wellbeing, 10 Wins for School Leaders, to share with you all today. It is aligned with the professional standards of educational leadership. That was some great feedback I got. I wanted to make sure that this resource is aligned with work that you're already doing so that it's not another thing. Some of the standards that it really looks at is ethics and professional norms, community of care and support for students, professional capacity of school personnel, professional community for teachers and staff, operations and management, and then school improvement. So it really encompasses a lot. And what I would say about this document and the feedback that I've received is that it really serves to affirm the great work that's already happening in Kentucky schools. So many of these things are already happening. But I also like to think of it as a resource that you can come back to at different points in the school year. So we know energy shifts throughout the school year. There's different months that are more challenging than others. And so if you start the year strong, really like supporting educator well-being and knowing that the building feels really energized, but then you feel kind of a dip in energy later in the school year, this is a great place to come back to and just double check and see what strategies are working and what maybe could be added. I like to talk about this discussion and really connect educator well-being to teacher self-efficacy. Because we know self-efficacy really impacts student outcomes. And so when I think about self-efficacy and feeling like you're really capable and doing a great job in your role, we know that that's impacted by well-being. If you're super struggling, that's going to impact how confident you feel in your role as an educator. And so I think about this document as supporting student well-being by supporting adults. As I share the resource with you, I would love for you to think about these 2 points. Which win would you most want to elevate in your school? And are there any climate and culture systems and wins at your school that you would want to add to this resource? So any wins that we could elevate into the conversation. So it's broken into 2 categories based on the EdWeek data. Celebrating educators is the first. The first is shoutouts, which is really apparent to all of us. I believe this is happening everywhere. What I like to highlight about this one is thinking about how can shoutouts be really intentional and systematic within schools. And a place that I've seen this done really well is one school had a Google form to submit gratitude for colleagues, staff members, And it served as kind of this repository to come back to. And so we know that when energy shifts, or if you're feeling really low, it can be hard to have like really authentic gratitude if you're really stuck and you're in a hard place. This was a really cool thing that school leaders did to come back to that really authentic gratitude, really highlight, remember this great thing that happened with your colleague, remember this win, and really bring it and elevate it and bring it back into the conversation when energy had shifted. And you can see here, each of the wins have standards aligned underneath. The next is leadership rounding. I liked to elevate this resource because it talks about intentionally and consistently checking in with all staff. We know as leaders and also just as people in general, there's always people that are more natural for us to connect with, and then people that are less natural for us to connect with. And sometimes you just need more time with folks that you're struggling to connect with. I thought this document had really great recommendations for making sure that it was intentional and consistent with all staff members. The next is a Harvard Business Review article that discusses practicing empathy as a team. It really has a lot of different gratitude activities to share. And this is when you're thinking about building the culture of your school, and within every meeting or every meeting led by other leaders like instructional coaches, how can you create a culture of gratitude? So that was modeled at the beginning of this meeting. You can start every meeting with a short engagement activity. But we also know those are hard to think of on the spot and can also get really old if you do the same one or the same 2 ones every time. And so I liked that this resource had a lot of different options in one place to come back to. This next resource was one that folks really enjoyed, and I got a lot of great feedback on. This is something that schools, I think, do naturally. You might have a colleague down your hallway and you say, hey, I need to step out and use the restroom, or hey, I need a moment, a breather. Can you come watch my class really quickly? What I thought was different and made this powerful as a resource is that it is intentionally and clearly calling out that the purpose of this structure is well-being. And it is addressed by school leaders and supported by school leaders to say, hey, we know everyone in our building at some point is going to need 5 to 10 minutes to take a breath and to emotionally regulate themselves so that they can better support students. And so having that message from leadership and having a structure was really powerful. And this is a short video that shows success within one school. And lastly, amplifying success stories. We've already talked about that. This just shares a couple different ways to do that. My personal favorite is local newspapers. We know that discussions about teacher retention and recruitment can feel really heavy sometimes, and that really does impact the well-being of our educators, thinking about the future of the profession and how it's being perceived and who's coming next and that sort of thing. And so we do want to elevate successes and great stories with our communities and share that success outside of our schools. And I think local newspapers is a great way to do that. And there's some other ideas here. I want to take a second to pause before going to the next part of the document and see if there's any comments, things that are standing out to you so far, things that you're already doing in your school and you're just glad to see here. What are our initial reactions? You can come off mute, put it in the chat. We have a small group, so it's great. We can hear from a lot of folks.
I'll chime in real quick. We do something, shout outs. I'm a K-8 school. So we hang the big poster paper like next to the teachers' classroom doors, and we have markers there, and students are able to go around and put a comment about that teacher, why that teacher makes them feel special. And I never knew what kind of impact that would have on teachers. And we started this last year, and they loved it. Like, teachers took everything they said to heart, and, you know, just little things like, oh, I can't believe they noticed that. So that was something really gratifying for my teachers here.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Sarah. And I think it's really cool that y'all found a system that's super easy, just like paper by the door, but then students can do that at any time. That's really, really cool. Other thoughts, reactions before moving to the next part of the document?
We start each of our team meetings or PLC meetings with what we call smiles and frowns. That's something I got off of Twitter from a guy named Monty Siri. He's an English teacher that does it with his class. And just teachers share either something that's going good or something that's not going very well. It could be school related, not school related, but it's had a really big impact on our team, camaraderie and connectedness there.
Thanks for sharing, Nick. And I'm glad to hear all of these things. Hopefully the document is feeling affirming to you all. And so I'll move into the next section here. Let me minimize this. Which is elevating educator voice. And so the next resource is a toolkit for equity-minded decisions and policies. This document did a great job of having a list of questions that really helps elevate thinking about all different stakeholders involved in a decision. But I think it also does a great job of discussing sustainability because we know if educators are trying to uphold a decision or policy that is not sustainable, it can cause a lot of challenges. And so I think this is a great resource to come back to. Next is leadership meetings. So intentionally inviting folks of all different experience levels to a portion of leadership meetings each week or every other week. I think the really important aspect of this one is regardless of performance. I've seen schools do a really great job of elevating teacher leaders and really leaning on their expertise. But I would love to see schools also really getting feedback from folks who are possibly struggling because they really know what they might need and what's going on. And so it can give a really holistic feedback. The next is office hours. This is pretty self-explanatory, but I do think it's worth noting that even if folks are not always coming to those, just the knowledge that that is an option can be really powerful for folks' well-being. Lastly, newsletters. This one is happening at most schools as well, but it is nice for elevating educator voice to have a way to submit teacher news to other colleagues. And then lastly, professional learning time. This is one with my colleagues who have really enjoyed this recommendation is creating flexibility within professional learning time. So knowing that instead of planning out all of the learning for the whole year, leaving some space for the needs of the moment and the requests of the educators on specific topics, which can also allow for some leadership development of your staff because you could have volunteer team-led topics. So that concludes the document and the resource I would like to share with you all. I was curious to hear from you all which wins you already shared some awesome wins that you're already doing. But is there any win that's standing out to you as one that you would want to take away? Or is there any win that you have at your school right now that you don't see on this list that you would want to elevate in the conversation?
Well, I'll chime in. This is Brian Ehrenberg. We utilize the house system made popular by Ron Clark Academy here at our school. And it's really been a game changer, not just for the students, but for the staff as well. Every person that is on our staff becomes part of a team, and it kind of ties in the family concept, but also, where the pieces fit together and to form a larger family. We utilize all different kinds of challenges, get-togethers, experiences for the kids and the staff. And so, for a kindergartner coming into the school, they're part of a team right away. And it makes a difference, for the kids that maybe aren't athletic or maybe don't have something that they do extracurricular wise. They get that tie in to something that allows them to feel belonging and a purpose here at the school. We do that with the staff as well. Not every staff member jumps in and volunteers for things. And so being part of a team, again, makes a difference. And, we've been doing this now, this is our third year. And it just keeps growing and keep doing well with it here at our school. So
Thank you for sharing that, Brian. That sounds really powerful. You said it's the house system. What is like the key components of that?
Well, we have 4 houses within our schools, within our school. In each house, you have certain values that they emulate or supposedly exemplify. They have colors that are associated with them, and we kind of decorate the school based around those ideals. And they're all, part of that. They do a little bit of learning, and then we create experiences for the kids based around those houses. We just had an academic competition for the kids at all levels, and so I had teachers create a sample of questions for the kids. They answered in the competition style, and then the winners of that get points for their house. And so it becomes a motivating system for the kids as well, because at the end of the school year, they want to be the house that wins, and we have a little ceremony and they get to celebrate. And I put the winning house on a plaque out in front of the hallway in front of the school here. So they can kind of see, hey, I was part of that. They earn points for their house on a daily basis. Anybody with a cell phone can award points to the kids. We have custodians and cooks that do that. We have teachers, assistants, everybody can throw points at the kids for catching them doing good things. So
very cool, like creating little neighborhoods and communities within the school. That's awesome.
Okay.
Okay. So to close us out, I did want to kind of shift the conversation to principal well-being. I had the opportunity to speak with a new principal and kind of asked him about his learnings from just 1 year on the job, and I thought they were really powerful, and I would share a few of them with you. First, he just was really connecting a cohesive leadership team to his well-being, which I thought was a great takeaway. So any work that he was doing there, he thought about that as work towards his well-being as well. But also he shared that he's constantly asking, what do I bring to the table in my role and my unique skills that no one else brings? And he said he asked that question because he wants to, one, focus on that so that he can bring the most value to his school community. But two, if there's a problem and he's not the best person to solve that, how can he best delegate it to the best person within the school building? And so thinking about principals' roles and how they have knowledge of the whole school and how they support staff to lean into their skills, but also into their development to best support students, thought that was a great question. And he also was reflecting on how he really wants to think about the roles and responsibilities within a school and really learn from other schools and other structures. He said he knows schools are all like set up a little bit differently. And thinking about how job descriptions don't always cover all the amazing things that folks do. So he gave an example. He was thinking, if there's a data manager at another school that's carrying on this extra project that's going above and beyond and it's going really well and it's allowing them to showcase their strengths, is that something he can bring back to his school and his data manager and allow them to show their strengths in an even new way and really support the community that way? So that was something he was thinking about. When I asked him what, if I was to create a resource specifically for principal well-being, what would he want to see on that resource? He shared he was really interested in best practices broken down by categories with learnings from other principals. And so some of those categories are listed here: student culture, instructional practices, and systems for school climate and culture. What other categories would y'all want to see on a resource that was to support principal well-being? Would it be best practices categories, or would it be maybe would it be something else? That leaves me with my last question for the group for us to close out, which is just, if our team was to create a resource to support principal well-being, what would you want to know or have on that resource?
I think for me, having a community of fellow principals that I can ask questions and just talk to. I'm lucky that my district is large enough to where we already have that, but just like the P3 group, where you can be a part of something and learn something and have the same issues that are happening, but you don't feel alone. That's super helpful as a principal.
Thanks for sharing that, Ann. That kind of makes sense to his desire for these learnings from other principals. What else would you want to see on a resource that was to support principal well-being? Well, if there's no other thoughts, I'll share my email in the chat. I love to discuss this topic and am always brainstorming ways to think about supporting well-being. So if you have more thoughts or would like to continue the conversation, I will share my email here. And just want to thank you all for your time so much today. And again, always happy to chat. So I'll leave that email here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. This time, I know we've been waiting for our interim commissioner to kind of chime in here, so I'll turn it over to Ms. Robin Fields Kinney.
Thank you, Chair. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. Again, my apologies for being tardy, dealing with lots of balls that we're juggling in the air here at the Kentucky Department of Education. I'm really glad that I did get to come a little later so I could hear Annalee's presentation. A lot of the information and links that she has provided really transverse not only the school district and your individual schools, but really are just good things to be aware of from a leadership perspective. And so I have already downloaded her little one-pager so that I can take a look at that. We do some similar things here at the Kentucky Department of Education. We have strategic excellence awards for our employees here to make sure that we are keeping our eye on the prize and recognizing those that go above and beyond. And just those little manners of recognition and praise really go a long way, especially in a very challenging work environment for all of us. And I want to recognize that I understand the challenges that, even though I've not been a principal or a teacher in your school districts, but certainly have had the pleasure of working with so many, and just the perseverance and resiliency that you all need each and every day to just keep going. I know it is almost spring break time for people, and so I hope that many of you will get a little bit of time. I know your work is never done, but I hope you get a little time to kind of take some time for yourself, relax, take a breath before you head into sort of the home stretch toward whether it's end of school, graduation, all those other activities that you all are juggling. Probably the most, one of the most visible things that we're doing here at the Kentucky Department of Education right now is we are continuing our search for the next commissioner of the Department of Education, and thought I would give you a little bit of update on that. We, the interview committee of the Board of Education, which is a subset of the full board, conducted interviews on March 7th and 8th, and 2 days of interviews, and have now narrowed the field of candidates to 3 finalists. And that was announced earlier this week. It's, some days your days just blur together, I'm sure. But that was announced earlier this week. We have 3 finalists that were named by the interview committee. They are Dr. Buddy Berry from Eminence Independent. He is a current superintendent there. Dr. Robbie Fletcher, superintendent in Lawrence County. And our final candidate, Dr. James Flynn, or Jim Flynn. He is currently the executive director of the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents and a former superintendent in Simpson County. We heard very strongly as we conducted our pre-interview surveys, and they went out to lots of advisory groups, They went out to our General Assembly members. They went out to just constituents across parents and families, and really wanting to understand what they wanted in the qualities of our next superintendent. And we heard very strongly from I would say the masses, that they want someone who knows Kentucky schools. They want a leader that can lead us with an understanding of how school districts in Kentucky work, and preferred that we look toward the superintendent's central office staff or former superintendents in that manner. And so I think the interview committee took that to heart as they listened to all of our candidates that we had. Our next steps on this Monday and Tuesday coming up, so that's March 18th and 19th, the full board will be interviewing the 3 finalists, and toward hopefully the selection of a candidate that we will begin negotiations of a contract. And that contract will be contingent upon the General Assembly's Senate membership approving that, or confirming, I should say, confirming that candidate as our commissioner. So the Kentucky Board of Education still employs that individual and makes that decision, but they are subject to confirmation by the full Senate. And our goal, this seems very quick, but our goal, as you know, we find the best candidate, the quality candidate that we need, but our goal is to then allow time for confirmation. So we'll get it over to them as quickly as possible and hope that they will act upon that confirmation by April 15th. So by sine die, which is the last day of the session, we will know if we have our next commissioner for the Department of Education. That has created, you know, we've been very busy with that, but work doesn't stop here. Other things still going on. Our next Kentucky Board of Education meeting is on April 9th and 10th, and it will be a very loaded and full agenda. Lots of things. There will be some regulations that are up for consideration. And the board will continue on our journey, our collective journey as public education on the United We Learn initiative. Again, trying to highlight and create across Kentucky those vibrant learning experiences for our students, for continuing to look toward innovation, especially in assessment, and then also engaging with our communities. So lots of work going on here at the department. I thought I would take just a few minutes and see if you all have questions. I did see on your agenda and caught just the last part of Cassie's presentation for you all. So I know you got a legislative update. That's the other thing that's very busy. And we are counting down the days. We have, I think, 8, or I know it's less than 10. Let's put it that way. And it's a very, very busy time. This is the time when things happen unexpectedly. So a lot of our time and energy and efforts are watching those bills, watching the committee meetings, and then talking with legislators about things that we like and things that we would rather, that we don't like, and the reasons behind it. So the next 10 to 15 days, very busy here at the department. I thought I would stop and see if you have any questions, any that I can answer for you. And if I can't answer, I will certainly track down the right person here at the department to help you with your need. So let me pause here for just a minute, see if anybody has any questions or curiosities about what's happening here at the Department of Education. No, you all are just head downs trying to make it through it every day. I understand. Believe me, I understand. I see on some of your, just in your backgrounds, I see lots of pictures on the walls. I see some whiteboards with a lot of data. So I can tell you guys are really busy out there. But please know that we appreciate all that you do for your students and your staff each and every day. It is a tough job. Running your schools and being part of your district. And I am still on the road a little bit, so I hope that I will get to visit some of you in your local school districts. I know that I have Floyd County coming up. I have Livingston County on my agenda, so I'll be going down in Western Kentucky a little bit. And then I think I have a couple more that we're still trying to schedule times. But again, I'll say the same thing that I've shared with your superintendents. If you have any desire for us to come visit in your schools, we're happy to come. I know that's a lot of work for you. And so I do not invite myself. But if you have any desire for us to come, I'll grab some of my leadership team and we'd be glad to come and see all the great things that you're doing in your school districts. I think I am turning it back over to, I'm not sure who I turn it over to. Does it go to Emily next?
You can turn it back over to me. I'm Brian Ehrenberg, the chair. Yeah.
Okay, then it's back to Brian.
Thank you so
Brian.
much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Next on the agenda here, we have a presentation on artificial intelligence with Crystal Doolin and Renee Hibbard. Sorry.
Hi, I'm joining you all from Kisti. I found a quiet space, so I'm hoping that no one else finds this quiet space for just a little while. Let me share my screen. Let's just share the entire thing.
And while Crystal's getting her slides ready, let me just kind of preface her presentation by giving you a heads up of what's going to happen in June. So Crystal's sharing, bringing this topic to us, kind of the first time the PRAC committee has discussed artificial intelligence. And as a follow-up in June, Marty Park is going to be with us. He's already got it prioritized on his calendar, and he's going to talk a little bit about district, local school leaders, and implementation guidance and suggestions for the use of artificial intelligence.
Thank you for that. Marty's running around here. It is a very hot topic at Kisti, as you might imagine. There are countless sessions on the topic, so it's definitely at the forefront of everybody's mind right now. I'm going to apologize. I am on a very tiny laptop where I'm used to having multiple screens, so I'm not able to see everything as I would like to see it in this space, so bear with me and please let me know, interrupt me anytime if I'm not seeing that you have a question or anything like that. So this session is a result of a session I shared at the P3 Ed Camp back in January. Just a really condensed, brief introduction to what I call a revolutionary partner. So we're not going to dive deep or anything like that. I definitely want to be respectful of your time, but I'm hoping to give you an overview that maybe will open some doors to some questions or some thought processes. Feel free to email me if you have questions or anything like that afterwards. Renee is not able to be here. She is in another meeting. So she had planned to join with me to sort of manage the chat and all those things, which is why I said, bear with me. And if you have questions, like I said, do not hesitate to interrupt me. I'm a middle school teacher. I'm quite used to being interrupted. I will just introduce myself quickly. My name is Crystal Doolin. I am currently a deeper learning educational consultant with Southeast South Central. I've been in education for 27 years, primarily middle school language arts, but I have taught social studies. I did work for many years as a digital learning coach and several other hats. So I feel like I've kind of bounced around and got a lot of different experiences, and that makes this type of topic really interesting to me because it's applicable everywhere. We're just going to dive in. Like I said, I want to be really respectful of your time. So starting off with what is it? AI, it's everywhere and we hear about it, but what actually is the definition? The short version of that is artificial intelligence is technology that enables machines to mimic the human experience of thinking and making decisions based on previous learning, just as humans do. But unlike humans, AI programs can process large amounts of data at unbelievable speeds. So it's not really thinking, even though it seems like it's thinking sometimes. it's using computing and predicting based on a database that it's trained on to make decisions and seem like it's doing the thinking. And it is a little off-putting, it frankly scary. I don't know about you all, but when I'm at home and my husband and I were just having a conversation about something and we go to watch a YouTube video and there's an advertisement for that, we're a little freaked out. So everybody is in that same boat. The thing is, it's not really new. It's been around. AI actually started decades ago in its most simple form. But even though it seems new and scary because it seems to be so prevalent right now, it's not. If you use technology, you use AI. If you're like me and you talk to your phone, I can't do anything, it seems like, without talking. I won't say her name or she'll respond right now, but I can't do anything without talking to her. I needed my GPS on my phone to direct me to get to the hotel when I came up here the other day. There are so many things in our life, everything from the things we use, like our TVs with Netflix, the Roomba in your house. It has a camera and AI built into it, to directions, like I just said, all the way up to, larger scale things like fraud alerts from your bank when, there's something weird about your, credit card usage through your bank or something like that. We use it all the time. It's not new. It's just kind of changed. In recent years, we've had like a new level of innovation. In November of 2022, 2022, ChatGPT was released to the public. And for people who know about these things, that wasn't that new, but for everyone else out in the world, it was very much new. And the thing about it is we had access to it. So there was an explosion. Within, I think, the first 5 days of release, they had over 1 million users or something like that. It really exploded. And, as happens with different tools, it rolled out into different jobs, different facets of our life, and people started being really creative with how they wanted to use it. So of course it rolled down to educators, and we started, figuring out, hey, we can do this and we can do that. And then of course our students, in most cases, were using it before we were, because it's on a lot of their social media platforms. So it became really impactful, really, really fast, and really scary, really fast. We always want to recognize that there are pros and cons to everything. So it seemed like at first, because it was so scary, that the cons were all we were hearing about. And now we're kind of moving around to more of a balanced understanding that there are pros as well as cons, and education can help us overcome those cons. So just for clarity, the GPT and ChatGPT, because I'm gonna talk about ChatGPT because it's sort of the springboard that caused so much commotion. But the GPT stands for Generative Pre-training Transformer. And essentially that means it's generative, it generates, it creates, it can create content in a number of different forms, from music to video to an essay for your teacher. Pre-training means it's been pre-trained, essentially on a box of data. So all of the data that's been collected from the internet, which ends up being hundreds of years of information, think of it like it's in a box. And ChatGPT was given that box and trained on what to do with it through coding. ChatGPT is not connected to the internet. I'm speaking of ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version, but it is not connected to the internet, so it doesn't have ready, available, like live data. It's pulling from that box that it was trained in. And then Transformer is essentially the tool that started making, when it first came out years and years ago before this, it's the thing that made it seem like these machines were actually thinking like a human, to put that in really simple terms. I am not a computer science person. I didn't even go to school to do technology because that wasn't a thing when I became a teacher. All of these things are out there, and there are so many avenues for learning about ChatGPT and all the other tools that are out there. So if you're interested in the specifics, I encourage you to check out the website AI for Education or Educators. Like, I'm sorry if it may be Education. I can't remember. You can Google it and it'll come up. I promise. It's one of the top sites right now. And of course, ISTE. They have tons of resources as well. Anytime I share this topic, I feel kind of like that bit of imposter syndrome because I'm not a computer scientist. So I always use this video because this person is a computer scientist. This is Kai-Fu Lee, who is a Taiwanese computer scientist who had a hand in a lot of this AI tool creation for major companies like Google and Microsoft and Apple and others. This is a clip from when he was on 60 Minutes back in 2019, so several years ago. And I just want you to hear the prediction that he made and consider where we are now. That was from 2019. And I think you have to think about the scope of things, but in general, it's happening. What he predicted is happening because the change, especially since 2019, if you think pre-COVID, the change is pretty dramatic. I know it's in every industry, but it seems like it's really massive right now in education. And the end point of it is we live in a world where this technology is present. And I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. We live in a world where this is present. It's not going to go anywhere. So we have to stop and think, okay, why does this matter for education? If we kind of get our ducks in a row, we want to think about why, because it is such a big topic right now for us. And it boils down to a lot of different things, but primarily the future for our students. The World Economic Forum projects job losses of 85 million by 2025, which is just next year. But it also estimates that AI will create 97 million jobs. Their advice to workers is to start reskilling. So that's from the World Economic Forum, which you can find all that information online, their infographic that gives you all of the rundown of the data from their research. But that's also in a Wall Street Journal article that came out and kind of like summarized everything. When I'm thinking, my daughter is in college. She just graduated from high school 2 years ago. And when I'm thinking about my child going out into the workforce and what she's going to need to know and be able to do, this concerns me. And I definitely want her to be prepared to be competitive, in the workforce. So this is at the forefront of a lot of what we're thinking about, but it's more than just, oh, they're going to need this in the job field. They're going to need this in life. And we'll get to more of that in just a moment. I wanted to share this particular slide with you. This is some recent research by Teach AI, which is another really great resource for this information and tools for sharing AI in your districts. What they're finding is that employers are looking for AI experience already. There are already so many jobs out there that require AI. And globally, English language job postings mentioning GPT or ChatGPT increased 21 times since November of 2022, which ironically is when ChatGPT was released to the public. So it's moving fast. And our students, not just the ones that are getting ready to graduate, but the ones in kindergarten have to start getting this information so that they can be viable when they get out of school. I shudder to think what it will be like for our kindergarten students when they get out. The world will be so much different, as well as, the AI tools. So the old digital divide was computers in schools. Who had the computers? I remember when we took a field trip down the hallway to go to the computer lab to do something. So the next digital divide was high-speed internet. Who has enough high-speed internet or the whole bandwidth thing that we went through for a while. And then who's got the one-to-one devices, which COVID kind of took care of because we had to do something about that at that point. But that's old now. At this point, our hope is that those digital divides have been closed. We know that they haven't because that's just life. But we hope that they have, and we work toward that. But we have to start turning our attention to a new digital divide, which is who is empowered to learn with and about AI. Because if we block it and we don't teach our students about it in any way, when they get out of school, they're going to be behind students who did have the opportunity to learn about AI and to learn to use AI. So we've got to figure out a way to close that digital divide. Now that comes obviously from the top down because we've got to have a lot of guidance, which I'll mention in a moment. But we really want to keep in mind this is the divide that's happening right now, and how do we fix that divide? So thankfully, we are getting like support and information so that we know what to do, because at first there were just so many questions. What do we do? How do we manage this? What's allowed? What's not allowed? President Biden issued an AI executive order in early 2023. Basically, it was just acknowledging the need for AI in education and giving some action ideas for that. And then our Office of Educational Technology at KDE, with their CATS master plan for schools, the 2024-2030, is mentioning, it has a little component about AI and supporting and giving us some direction about using AI as a growth opportunity, teaching our students AI literacy, making sure that we're keeping humans in the loop so that the human element is still there, because what we're learning is that AI is not going to replace teachers. We still need teachers for that, but AI can be a really fantastic assistant for not just teachers, but also our students. So what it comes down to from that is that all students will need what we call AI literacy in the classrooms, not just students in computer science fields. And AI literacy is the ability to know what AI is, how it works, to be able to use it for a variety of purposes, to think critically and evaluate it, and to understand the ethical considerations of artificial intelligence or AI. That sounds like a lot, but it actually, think of it the same way we think of digital literacy now. In the same way that our students need to be digitally literate, we want them to be literate with AI so that they're able to understand how it works, understand the misconceptions about it, as well as understanding the problems with it, because it's not perfect. You can't just put something in and it gives you a perfect answer and you use that or whatever. We want them to learn how to work with it the same way teachers are learning to work with it and use it as a tool, because they're going to need that in their future. But we also want them to understand the ethics of it, because there's so much to consider. There's bias because it's trained on the internet. So, the internet was created by humans, which means there's bias there. We want them to know those things. We want them to understand what hallucinations are, which is where the program just makes things up, because that happens. So a lot of considerations go into that. And it sounds like this really giant thing where we need a whole separate class for AI literacy, but it actually needs to be embedded into classrooms, not just the computer science classrooms, but in all classrooms. And in order for that to happen, we kind of have to let teachers play with it and learn about it and begin using it themselves to build it into their teaching, then roll it, towards students once we get there with all of the privacy considerations and everything. So how can AI enhance learning? Well, when we're looking at the classroom, it provides opportunities for a lot of different things. I just sort of put them in 5 little compartments here. One is less convergent thinking, more divergent thinking. As we move, and we've been doing this for quite some time, but as we move from classrooms that are less product based and more process based with focuses, critical thinking, things like that, this is going to help us get away from that 2 + 2 is 4 convergent one right answer sort of thinking and move into more divergent thinking, where there are a lot of different answers and our students are doing a lot of problem solving. It also, at the same time, like I said, focuses on process over product. Because if students, it's no different than Google. If students can put an assignment in on ChatGPT or Google, they're going to get the same basic information because they're both pulling from internet databases. But if they can do that and get the answer, and that's what they turn in and they're graded on, that's a focus on product. We want to focus on the product, or process, sorry, the metacognition, the thinking. How do we get there? We also can use it for personalizing learning. And I don't mean like in terms of adaptive software or something like that. I'm thinking allowing the teacher to personalize assignments for students, for groups of students, and also free the teacher up so that the teacher can do one-to-one teaching, small group teaching, because AI can support other things that are happening in the classroom. Probably my favorite is immediate feedback. I'm a language arts teacher, and this is a thing for everyone, just in different ways. But with my thinking and remembering the things I dealt with, if I assigned any type of writing, let's say my students did an extended response question as part of a test, it would take me days if I were working consistently on scoring and providing feedback for those, because I had around 100 students. If I'm trying to give students immediate, meaningful feedback, I lost it a few days into that. I want to be able to turn that around the next day and have immediate conversations with them, and AI can help me do that. And then finally, it does give us options for multiple means of representation, which goes into UDL. And we know that coming at assignments or instruction from different avenues and allowing students to get through it or get to it through multiple means is always going to be a win, because not every student learns the same way. So what does it look like if you go into a classroom or when you're talking to a teacher and they're saying, I don't understand how to use this in my classroom? Here are just some really basic things. It's grown a lot. There are a lot of companies that have taken large language models like ChatGPT, and they're basically using them to build filtered programs. Like some would be like Diffit, EduAid, Magic School. There are a lot of different companies that have sort of took ChatGPT and filtered it up just to be specific for teachers. And a lot of teachers are already using those things. So there's a lot of that out there, but I'm thinking in terms specifically of ChatGPT, what you might do with that in the classroom. And as a teacher, you might use it to determine the reading level of a text or rewrite a text at a new level. Let's say your students are studying the Gettysburg Address, and that's pretty high level reading, but you need to adjust that for some of your students, or even adjust it for all of your students so they can do a compare and contrast or something. You can totally rewrite it at different levels. You can even rewrite it in different voices. I worked with some people. We had it rewrite the Gettysburg Address in the voice of a Valley girl. It was pretty funny. You can put it into a lot of different characters and things like that. It's interesting and makes it really engaging for students. Generate model writing for students to use as an exemplar. This is also one I really appreciate, because creating exemplars to use with your students takes a long time. Everybody knows that. But this will let me do it in like 50 seconds. It'll also generate flawed writing for students to critique. You can use it to evaluate writing, like I was mentioning a few minutes ago, and provide timely feedback. You can use AI in sort of like a role-playing situation where you ask it to assume a particular position or personality, and your class can debate it on a topic. Excuse me. It can provide problem-solving assistance in math. Like if you have some high flyers that are ready to move on, you can set up an AI chatbot that will answer their questions and help them move on while you're working with other students. And then one of the most fun ways is to speak to AI as if it's a character from a book, a person from history in a certain job, in a different place, in a different time, an animal or an object. Like your first grade class can interview the ocean. You just ask AI to take on that role. So there are a lot of creative ways to utilize it in the classroom, and a lot of really great examples out there. Donnie Piercy has a few videos on YouTube. If you've not seen those, he was featured on Good Morning America, I think it was. And they videoed him, doing some things with his students in the classroom. So if you're curious from that vantage point of what it looks like, be sure to look up some of those videos. So let's think now, y'all are administrators, so we got to go beyond the classroom and think a little bit broader. How can AI save time and make workflow more efficient across the district? And these are just some ideas that are already being utilized in a lot of different districts, across the world, not just in the United States. But you can cut the time that is spent on repetitive tasks, like emailing. Emailing takes a long time if you're a really dedicated overthinker with what you say in emails. So you can use it to create emails. And a lot of the tools for using it through email are actually coming to Gmail pretty soon. So they're built in. You can use it to help you plan faculty meetings and PDs, to plan for teacher coaching, to do clerical work, to prep for board meetings, to analyze data. It can analyze data that it takes humans weeks to analyze, but it does it in just like a minute. It can help you with scheduling, and then lesson planning and grading. Of course, we spoke a little bit about the classroom. So I want to pause for just a second and do a quick demonstration. I know a lot of you have probably used ChatGPT. I'm going to switch over this tab. But just in case you haven't, I want to just do a quick demonstration. This is a prompt that I shared at the P3 session. So I'm going to ask, I'm a principal, I'm going to ask it to help me with observations. So I've said, you are an elementary principal, because I'm asking it to take on a persona with expertise in providing actionable feedback to teachers based on classroom observations. Create an observation report using the Danielson framework. I will provide you with the lesson plan and the observation notes. I need you to rate the following components, and we've given the bot some specifics here: 1A, 1E, 3B, 3C, and 3D. And then I'm going to enter that, and it's going to start building what I'm not ready for. So one of the things you have to talk to teachers, and then teachers talk to students about, is when you work with ChatGPT, you have a conversation with it. So I haven't given ChatGPT the lesson plan or the observation notes yet. A better way to have approached this might have been to do this portion and then ask it, do you understand? And then it will say, yes, I understand, and it will wait. But I don't have to do that right now. I can go in and say, please revise this plan or this to reflect the following. And I'm going to go grab, and please don't judge. This is a really, really simplistic lesson plan for a teacher. Super simplistic, just as if I had gone into a science classroom and that teacher was doing a lesson on bridges. Students were working together to build a freestanding, not connected to anything, for stability and without piers or supporting structures along the span, bridge that is 50 centimeters long. Each group of students should describe their bridge design elements to the class and demonstrate that it's able to stand freely for a specific period of time. And then I've given it my observation notes. Now, sometimes you have to work with it. Sometimes it helps to do one thing at a time, so I might wait and put my observation notes in second, but I'm going to see what happens if I just go ahead and give it all of that. Okay, so it's giving me a lesson plan overview and observation notes. And now it's rating the teacher on all of those components and giving me overall comments. So what if I need to know, what can I specifically tell this teacher to do or to work toward to move forward? So I might ask a follow-up question like, create specific strategies for the teacher to move up in his or her proficiency based on the framework. And it's creating that for me. So something you have to be really kind of aware of is, with AI, the rule in general is 80-20. If AI can get you 80% of the way there, you will need to put in the last 20%. I would not copy and paste this in something and send it straight to the teacher. AI is my assistant, so I'm going to take what it has suggested for me. I'm going to move it over to like a Google Doc or something, and then I'm going to edit it and make it more applicable, more in service of what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it's all about giving it more voice, and then sometimes it's about making corrections because it does get things wrong. It'll have a hallucination, or there might be some built-in bias that you need to correct. But the gist of it is, this can save you so much time. And some of the favorite prompts that I've shared with principals before are these types of things where we're looking at evaluations, but also writing letters of recommendation. It can help you with that. Doing classroom visits, like if you're visiting a classroom and you're not sure, okay, I'm going into a classroom I'm not familiar with. I never taught 11th grade geometry. What do I look for in this classroom? It can help build open house plans. It can help with behavior plans. Actually, right here is a behavior plan that I created for something else, where I ask it to write an intervention for an 8th grade student who is defiant against their teacher. Notice you don't put student names in or anything like that, of course, but it gave me goals, intervention steps, and then a summary at the end. So I can take that, that's my 80% possibly, put it on a Google Doc, revise, edit, use it to add to what I already knew and want to do to make it even better. So honestly, there's no end to the possibilities for what you can do with it. And I encourage you, if you've not played with it, to just kind of get in there. You don't speak to ChatGPT the same way you speak to Google. In Google, when we do a search, the goal is to use as few words as possible because you want to get less responses. But with ChatGPT or any AI tool, the more detailed your prompt is, it's called a prompt, the better your response will be. You want to be as specific as possible. You want to give it a persona or an idea of, what the goal is, a lot of different things. There are several different formats out there for, different little acronyms and things to help you remember the different components of a good prompt. And of course, you can find those online, but I just encourage you to get on there and play with it. Just, play around because you can't break it. I think you will be really surprised by what you learn just by experimenting. All right, so the elephant in the room is this is all great, but how do we safeguard use in the school system? Because when it comes down to it, we have to be careful about everything. We're dealing with human beings, little human beings, and we don't want to do anything that we shouldn't do. This is sort of like a top-down thing. And this is really what a lot of teachers are sort of craving. And that's the development and implementation of policy that supports the use, addresses privacy, vets vendors, and outlines acceptable use for teachers and students. And that's a beast of its own. There are, I will tell you, a lot of districts in Kentucky that are already in this. There are several sessions here at KISTI. I just went to one earlier with a district that was sharing their what's happened. They started like a year and a half ago. When ChatGPT first came out, they were building things, and they sort of implemented a plan, and they were sharing with us how that's going. I'm happy to say it's going really well for them. But there are many districts around the state that are in the middle of this and doing this that you might want to reach out to and find out how's it going. And if you're not aware of any, feel free to email me. I'll send you a couple district names that you could make a contact with. From that development of the overall policy for a district that's going to provide us so many of those things, then you have to roll it down to providing staff trainings. Teachers are already using this. Like, there are so many companies that are courting teachers, like hundreds of companies already that are giving free versions. And of course, you can pay a little more to get more bells and whistles, but they're working the angle of, this is a great assistant to give you work-life balance back. And I applaud that. I love that. But I think teachers are really craving actual training so that they understand better the workings of AI and all the privacy considerations, because not all of those companies are created equal. Teachers need to know how to vet vendors and make sure that they have the right privacy policies in place. And, what are you doing with the information that I put in? And teachers also need to know there's certain types of information that you don't want to put in. We want to encourage them not to be afraid of it, but also share with them the things they need to know to use it in the right way and effectively with students. So again, like I suggested a second ago, explore, let them play, let them explore, give them some PD on it and just let them, go out there and just play around. Next is, targeting students. We need to implement AI literacy. It's going to have to be in all classrooms across the board, implemented into and embedded into what students are learning and doing, not just as a separate assignment. That education that we provide them with AI literacy will mitigate a lot of the misuse that we're worried about. Now, will it fix it all? No, because students are students, just like we adults. When I drove up here the other day, I'm sure I broke the speed limit a time or two because that happens. We're not perfect. We all break the rules every once in a while, and we're always going to have students that do that. They're going to cheat with paper if they can't cheat with the internet. So we have to educate them and try our best to teach them to use it for good and not bad. And the end part of that is redefining cheating. Cheating today is not the same thing that it was 3 years ago. It's totally different. And we have to model responsible use. And that comes from educating the teachers and letting them play and experiment and use it so that they can feel comfortable modeling that responsible use. There are tons of articles and so much research out there to support this idea of redefining cheating and modeling responsible use rather than going down that cheating rabbit hole, because that's sort of like a dead end. AI is not going anywhere. We have to learn to work with it. So it's obviously scary for teachers because we're concerned when we give students an assignment and they can come back the next day with the entire thing completed but not written by them. So a lot of people are going to AI detectors, and I just want to share a cautionary word about that. AI detectors are often misunderstood as being the plagiarism checkers of the AI world. And a lot of companies are making a lot of money off of school districts because they're selling the AI detectors. However, plagiarism checkers compare a piece of work against an existing source online. AI generated content is not pulled from an existing source online. It's created new every time you prompt it. So there is nowhere to go back and find that exact thing copied. It's a synthesis of so many different things on in that box of information that it's trained on. You can ask it the same question multiple times, and it might have nuggets of the same thing, but it's always going to be a bit different because it's generating it new each time. There is no way that we can reliably say that a child used AI. AI detectors are unreliable, like I said, and they have a very high false positive rate. A lot of universities have basically said, oh, no more AI detectors because they're having such a hard time with students who are being falsely accused and students who have a super high level of anxiety because they didn't cheat, but they're scared to death that their teachers are going to run it through an AI detector and it's going to give a false positive and they're going to fail that class or something. What really drove this home for me is when OpenAI, which is the company that created ChatGPT, actually acknowledged that AI detectors do not work. Now, OpenAI had their own AI detector that they were putting out in the world. They pulled it back. And this is a quote from their educator FAQ and some of the information they share on their site about it. While some, including OpenAI, have released tools that purport to detect AI-generated content, none of these have proven to reliably distinguish between AI-generated and human-generated content. They just don't work. And rather than going down that path and possibly, accusing a child that did not use AI, of cheating with AI. I think we have to recognize that it's not cheating, because cheating is not the same thing as it used to be. And we build in like acceptable use policies and modeling and AI literacy. And then finally, excuse me, finally, we want to change the conversation. If we're talking about cheating in AI detectors, like I said, that's a rabbit hole that we don't want to go down. It's the wrong conversation. The real conversation is we have to change how we teach. And that's not new. That's been a thing since Google started. We started back then saying, oh, we've got to make our assignments so that they can't look them up on Google. It's still the same. It's the same case. We need complex process over product, Google proof, and now AI resistant assignments. And there are actually tools out there now that will help teachers with building AI resistant assignments, because that's a thing. And ironically, those are AI tools. But none of that's new. It's just we've got this really cool new partner to help us do it. And we just need to learn to understand that partner, teach our students about that partner, so that we can get over this hurdle of being afraid of it. So I wanted to let you all hear this gentleman, because I liked the way he said, you know, AI doesn't scare him anymore, and here's why.
Crystal, I still see Chat GPT.
Oh my word. I'm so sorry. I guess you all didn't see these screens, but I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not able to see everything that you all are seeing. These were the safeguards that we just kind of, I talked through, and the cautionary words. So I really think that's a great way to look at it. Just kind of changing that conversation, understanding both sides of the equation, but trying to latch on to the positives as much as we can, because our students are going to need it. I feel like we have to teach our students for tomorrow, not for today. And if we're thinking, very closed-minded about it, that kind of keeps us in the realm of today, where if we look at all the possibilities and we open things up a little more and get into AI literacy and using it in the classroom, we're more able to teach our students for tomorrow, so that whether they're a senior in high school, or a kindergarten student right now, when they come out of our schools, they're ready for the world. I apologize for all the technical issues. I have other people in the room with me, and I'm trying to be respectful, and I did not even notice that didn't switch over. But I do want to thank you all for the time. I hope it was helpful. I will check the chat in just a moment in case I've missed any questions there. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions that you didn't have a chance to ask today or something. And we do ask for feedback. I work through Southeast, South Central, and feedback is, how we learn, how we get better. We have a lot of other sessions. I've done some 3-hour sessions for administrators on this topic in person and digitally. So if you're interested in learning more, there are lots and lots of avenues out there for learning more. Reach out to me. If I can't do it for you, I'll share, because I'm just really eager for us to get on the same plane with this, so that we're able to take it and run with it and level this playing field and close that digital divide for our students in Kentucky. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we will now have Ellie Gilbert talking about the Impact Kentucky Working Conditions Survey.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen, I hope. It's coming, I think. Can you guys see that? All right, super. All right, well, I will not talk very long about this. I know this is probably your least excited topic to hear about today. Impact Kentucky we closed in December, and we got our results back in early February. and we're kind of still in the process of talking to districts and seeing where folks need support. So just to kind of refresh your memory, these are the topics that we discuss in the survey: professional learning, feedback and coaching, school leadership, staff leadership relationships, resources, managing student conduct, educating all students, school climate, and emotional well-being and belonging. And to give you a glimpse at the results from this year, we did have an increase. Almost 40,000 folks took the survey. I was hoping for 40, but we got in the 39 something thousand. So I was pleased with that. An increase in nearly every area except fewer that don't have a subgroup. So I can't really explain why that is, but at least we're finding everybody's place to identify them. So, of course, 33,000 plus teachers. So that is the large quantity of who we have. All right. Now, this is, I'm going to preface this by saying I do not advise that you look at the results on the state level because they don't really mean a whole lot, but we're going to use them as an example. So if this were your school, this is kind of what you would see. The staff leadership relationships, these were our state averages, and I was actually kind of surprised to see everything moving up because I keep hearing so many negative things, but this kind of reinforces that a lot of schools are making strides in these areas. So school leadership, staff leadership relationships was the highest positive area. And then if we go all the way down to the bottom, resources was the least positive area. That shouldn't come as a huge surprise. We all know that we need more of everything to make the magic happen. So what you see when you break these down, and I know you've done this with your school, so I won't belabor the point, but you can look at how they've changed over time with each individual area. You can compare your school to state and national benchmarks. There's not a ton of different comparison groups. You can look at similar schools, grade level, urban, non-urban, and free and reduced lunch percentage. I would really like to see in the future us be able to like pull several different districts, and you can do a comparison that way. But right now, that's how you have to start, is just to look at that. So you can see that we are above a lot of other states looking at the working conditions. Then you can look at how each of them break down by groups. So 65% of teachers responded positively to this question, 97% of principals, 95% of assistant principals, and then other education professionals were at 78% positive. You can break that down into experience levels, just time in the district, all of those different things, if those are of interest to you. And I do encourage you to look at those. So I pulled just one question, or I pulled the list of the questions on that one topic, school staff and relationships, and looks pretty good news. If this were my school, I'd be really pleased to see that 75% of the folks there feel like the school leaders set a positive tone. And so that's just kind of what I'd start with doing, is looking for those points of pride. Then we can look over here and we see, oh, when the school makes important decisions, how much input do teachers have? Only 52% responded favorably. So that would be something I would want to investigate a little bit further. But still, it's not a bad, it's not bad. And it's an improvement over times past. So everybody's already looked at all of their data, and I'm sure it's a sensitive subject for everybody because it does require a lot of vulnerability. So my recommendations for you as you look at this is to celebrate your strengths, because everybody has some area that they have done well in. No matter how dire the data might look to you, find your areas to celebrate. But then identify those needs attention areas, but maybe not all of them. Maybe pick one or two that are of the most concern to you, and do a deep dive into at least one or two of those areas. Another thing that I encourage is to share those results with your staff. And I know that is can be a very touchy process. Panorama, our partners who sponsor the survey, They have a great little slide deck that you can just pop your own data into, and it kind of presents it and asks some questions. So I've got that link there, and I will give that to you. I would also advise that you just give the teachers time to process the results and not ask for anything immediately. Just kind of throw it out there and then give them a little time, but then do ask for next steps assistance from them as time goes by. A couple of questions that I think are really important to consider. Of course, you want to think about what the root causes are for the results, but I think the second question is more important. Among those, what can you control? I think when you think about the resources question, that's the lowest ranking question for almost everyone. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do about your resources, but sometimes it's just a matter of being more transparent about it. On that example that I gave you, the lowest area was how much input do teachers have? Maybe teachers have a lot more input than they think they do. You just need to share those processes with them, how you reach those decisions, and it's a simple solution. But again, just stick with what you can control. There are some things you can't control, and that would be just frustrating to feel defeated by. What strategies to address it would be most effective? And we do have, Panorama provides a toolkit of resources that you can look at and find some strategies. Do we know enough about what works to address it? And if not, who can help? And I think that's a really key question, is find someone who's doing that area really, really well in their school and ask them, what are you doing? Look at the ones who've improved greatly over the last couple of implementations of the survey. How are they making those things priorities for their school? So I realize that it's a very touchy subject, but I think it's so important that we collect that data and that we show the staff that we're doing something with it, that it's not just good to know and stick in a folder. So here are some of the topics that Panorama has generated some resources for. If you go to Panorama, I think it's just panoramaed.com, there's a whole playbook. If you go to the impactky.org page, there's a whole playbook of different things that you can try in your school, different ideas for activities with your staff, things to discuss. So I would encourage you to utilize that. We just finished, if you have missed them, we just finished the last of the professional learning series that our Panorama partners put on. They did one that was just about looking at the data. And then this one that they did this morning was next steps. And so I wish that we could maybe get another round of those maybe over the summer while people have a little bit more time to think about what's going to happen next year. Also, if decisions have been made for administrative changes, that might be a good move too. So I might see if they'd be interested in presenting that again. But they do have some good resources. We would love to talk to you. I'm sure your P3 folks would have lots of good advice for managing it. So I just really encourage you to talk about it with your staff and use it as a tool. It's just one tool in the toolbox. Does anybody have questions? All right. Thank you all so much. And if you ever have questions about this or you want to talk more about it, you can reach out. I'll put my email address and I'll drop the slideshow in the chat.
Thank you. All right, next we have professional supports for school leaders with Emily Satterley.
Good morning. I'm excited to say that we have several professional learning opportunities going on right now to support school leaders. This week, a new cognitive coaching cohort met for 2 days of training in Frankfurt. Keith is helping lead this great professional learning opportunity. We will meet for 6 more days of training in April and May, and a new cohort of cognitive coaching will begin in the fall. We'll be sending out information about how to apply for scholarships in the P3 newsletter in the coming months. And if you have not had the opportunity to participate in this professional learning, I'd encourage you to seriously consider it because it really is fantastic. And please help spread the word to other school leaders who you think would benefit from cognitive coaching. The P3 team is joining forces with the educational cooperative leaders across the state to kick off the new statewide principal network next week. This collaborative support is specifically designed for principals and assistant principals to learn, problem solve, network, and collaborate with other leaders in Kentucky to hear and explore fresh ideas about real-world challenges that principals face. The first virtual session will be on March 20th from 8 to 11 Central Time, 9 to 12 Eastern Time, which will include roundtable topics, level discussions, and time set aside for problem solving. The P3 team members have met with the leaders from all 8 cooperatives multiple times in preparation for this event, and we're hoping for a great turnout. 158 school leaders have registered so far, and I will drop a link in the chat box in a few minutes so that you can access the flyer for this event. And if you have not registered, then I'd encourage you to sign up today because it will be a great day. Stacy has been leading the school SIMS cohort through a series of 4 meetings, and our last SIM cohort meeting is coming up in April. In these meetings, participants engage in discussions and practice situational decision-making around scenarios that school leaders face. In April, participants will work through a simulation based on end-of-the-year tasks. So we're looking forward to that. A new opportunity, if you want to go to the next slide, please, that the P3 team is offering this year that I'm especially excited about is the assistant principal cohort. 147 assistant principals have signed up for the cohort, and we have met 4 times now. Our goal with this cohort is to offer an avenue for assistant principals to network, build their capacity with respect to PSEL, and to share ideas. Next slide, please. In October, we hosted an in-person AP cohort kickoff meeting at Sauer, followed by 4 virtual meetings. You see the topics for each meeting here, and they're always based on feedback from participants. In these meetings, I try to incorporate some type of professional reading into each session, along with some practical strategies that the APs can immediately implement, and then come back together and discuss at future meetings. During the first Zoom meeting, participants communicated that 2 of the biggest challenges they face as assistant principals are finding balance and organizing priorities. So typically we spend some time during each session exploring ways to help with both of these challenges. Participants have said that they really value the time they get to spend discussing challenges with other assistant principals and having space to think through these topics together. So we try to build in plenty of opportunities for discussion. During each session, we also spend some time with PSEL and any tools that the P3 team can offer to help with PSEL evidence collection and professional growth. The focus of our February meeting was supporting teacher effectiveness, with most of our time centered around how to use a walkthrough cycle to provide teachers with meaningful feedback and how to plan for high quality professional learning based on walkthrough trends. And of course, how all of this relates to PSEL, as well as how it ties in with the Impact Kentucky survey results. In the March session, we revisited how to support teacher effectiveness, and then we moved into how the assistant principal can help cultivate a positive school climate and culture. In April, we will be focusing on wrapping up this school year and preparing for the next school year. We will also hear from some principals who have previously served as assistant principals about what they wish they had known or done before moving into the principal role. And the goal of this discussion is to strengthen the principal pipeline and to help assistant principals embrace and maximize their current experiences to help prepare them for their next step if they are interested in leading a school as a principal. And if any of you are interested in sharing at the April meeting, please let me know. We'd be glad to hear from you, and I'd love to see what you have to offer around this topic. Next slide, please. Looking forward to next year, I'd like to offer a book study over all other duties as assigned by Ryan Donlin, to guide the focus of the AP cohort meetings. The topics we will focus on will be time management, fostering a positive school climate and culture, developing relationships, protecting and promoting priorities and people, leveraging firm and fair discipline, capitalizing on teachable moments, safeguarding an equitable education for all, taking time for teaching and learning, and supporting school improvement and accountability. Those are the focused areas of the chapters of the book. So I'm excited about continuing this opportunity during the 24-25 school year. I'm also looking forward to next year. The P3 team has set the initial certified evaluation training dates. We were able to schedule at least one in-person training with each of the 8 co-ops this year for a total of 10 in-person trainings across the state. We will also offer 4 virtual options in the winter months. We have some update training dates on the calendar already, but we're going to be getting more of those set in the next couple of weeks. Last year, we offered an update training, and this is the 6-hour training for experienced school leaders. We had a coaching focus last year, and this year we're looking at some other different focus areas so that we can add one more option this year. We'd love to take some time now to get some feedback from you all about any focus areas that you think we should offer in the 6-hour update training for this year. And if there are also any topics that you think assistant principals would benefit from learning about during the AP cohort meetings, that may be a common area of growth that's needed that you have noticed working with your assistant principals, I'd love to hear those ideas now. And also, if there are any other types of cohorts or professional learning opportunities that you think is a need across the state, please let us know. So I'll open it up now for you guys to give some feedback on these ideas. I'm learning in the cognitive coaching training to embrace wait time. So become more comfortable with silence.
Emily,
Okay.
do you have 3 different questions that you're looking for, or is it just one?
Well, there are really 3. One is about the update training. If you have any focus areas that would be the most beneficial for us to focus on. Also, are there any areas of needed growth for assistant principals that you've noticed that we need to add in to focus on with them? And then if there are any other cohorts or professional learning opportunities that we need to explore to offer next year. And if you don't have any of those today, that's quite all right. The P3 team is always open to any feedback or ideas in these areas, and we'd love to hear from you. Stacy and Brian, thanks for letting me share, and that's all I have.
Thanks, Emily. I appreciate it. All right, this takes us to adjournment, and I believe I have to have a motion to adjourn. I know our next meeting date is June 13th, and I'm sure that Mrs. Noe would like to say something about upcoming meeting dates for next year as well that are listed there on the slide deck.
Yeah, just a note that those meeting dates have been set, so you could go ahead and add those to your calendar, jot those down, but I will be following up with the calendar invitation for those.
So then do I have a motion to adjourn?
Nick Brooks, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have a second?
Robert Lightning, I second.
Thank you, Robert. And if you could state your agreement in the chat, and that will conclude our meeting. I thank you guys for coming and spending your time with us today. Hopefully you learned something, and you guys enjoy the rest of this week.